Hey everybody, Movie Reviewer Next Door here, and I'm here to cap off the first 3 John Wick films with a review of John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. This film came out in 2019, directed by Chad Stahelski, and it stars Keanu Reeves, Halle Berry, Ian McShane, Lawrence Fishburne, Mark Dacascos, Asia Kate Dillon, Lance Reddick, and Angelica Houston. Pretty big cast. Now, in the third film, Super Assassin John Wick returns with a $14 million price tag on his head and an army of bounty hunting killers on the trail. After killing a member of the shadowy International Assassins Guild, the High Table, John Wick is excommunicado, but the world's most ruthless hitmen and women await his every turn. It's technically the plot. What did I think of this third film? I think it's the best of the series. And if all the comments made about the first and second films weren't made about those films but this one, I'd 100% agree. Though I still don't think the film is perfect, I do have a couple big issues that don't affect my liking for the film or love for this film, but I think this film actually delivers what people are saying the first and second did. I'll get to the cast real quick because I do have quite a bit to say. Keanu Reeves as John Wick, he is improved. I think this performance is a little bit better than the first, way better than the second, because in the second he felt kind of off to me. It felt like he was trying too hard to be badass. There are moments in this film that I'm still a bit on, like at the end where Barry King says, "You're mad, aren't you?" and he says, "Yeah." I don't exactly buy it. But yeah, he still does good in the film, and I buy more of the action scenes in this film too, and I think they're a lot more fun. Halle Berry as Sophia. She's like an old confidant or old acquaintance of John Wick's. He gets to help her for a bit. He gets her to help him for a bit. I thought she was great. I love Halle Berry. I always will. She's a gorgeous woman and a pretty great actress. She's one of the few that I'm like, okay, her acting matches her, like, fame. Because there are actors like Julia Roberts, Kiefer Sutherland that I can, like, go either way on. They're very director-dependent for me. But, yeah, I love Halle Berry. I wish she was in more of the film. She's in about 20 to 25 minutes max. And I wish her character had more to do, but it was nice to see her in a big ol' action scene before she left the film. At least she wasn't just like a throwaway character or something like that. And from what I've heard, she's not in the fourth film, which I'm a bit mad about. But I still really liked her here. Ian McShane as Winston. In the first 2 films, you could kind of take him or leave him for me. In this film, he actually has like a character, really. I feel like the first 2 films, he's kind of just there to have another name in the cast. But here, he's actually like commanding the screen during his scenes, I think. And I think it's a big improvement acting-wise and dialogue-wise. And he's just more of a character here. And I loved seeing him, and I thought it was very interesting what he did. Lawrence Fishburne as Barry King. I love Lawrence Fishburne. I always have. I always will. And it was nice to see him given, again, something to do in the film. Mark Dacascos as Zero. In all honesty, well, actually, let me talk about Asia Kate Dillon first. Asia Kate Dillon is one of my biggest issues with the film. She is a horrible villain. I understand she's probably not going to do a bunch of fighting. I understand that. There are ways to do this character right. If you have her played by someone like I'd more buy Angelica Houston as being menacing. I don't buy this bitch. I don't know anything about her as a person. She's probably a cool person in real life. I don't know her that well. But from this performance, I really don't care to learn more about her. with lines like, "We are high table. You are below us." Like, she just comes off very whiny, and I just don't buy her being a badass or being a higher up. I don't buy her as a villain. And the way she exits the film is very unearned and very unsatisfying. Though I will get to how the film makes up for that. But I'd rather Mark Dacascos as Zero was the main villain, because I found him very interesting. Because the trend of these films has been, the first film you had the villain as someone who fears John Wick and is annoyed that he has to cross paths with him again. It's not like, oh, I'm just a big bad villain. He's actually like, there's a little bit of that, but for the most part it's like, I'm scared of John Wick and I think my son should be scared of him too. In the second film, while I hate that villain too, he is a former adversary of John Wick that's turned against him because John Wick, well, basically for no reason. He's just like, oh, you killed my sister, now I'll try to kill you in retaliation, as if I didn't just ask you to kill my sister. And then the third one, you could have had Zero, who's basically a John Wick fanboy, forced to kill John Wick by the high table. You could have easily had that, but instead we got Asia Kate Dillon. Lance Reddick as Sharon. He's, again, another supporting character from the first two films that's actually given shit to do in this film. And I really liked him here. I love his voice. I love him as an actor. Just from this film alone, I really like him and I want to see him in more films. I have a film over there, The Domestics, that I'm very curious about. I'm really curious to see him in that. But yeah, I really liked him here. And Angelica Houston as Director. She plays like a Russian woman who like has this like ballerina studio or like fine arts studio, something like that, and they're like trained to be ballerinas or wrestlers or whatever, but also killers. Very interesting, and apparently this will be expanded on in Ballerina with Ana de Armas, directed by Len Wiseman, who directed Die Hard 4 and I think most of the Underworld films. I like him as a director. I think he's directed some very decent action films, so I'm looking forward to that, actually. But yeah, this film, it does what I wanted the first and second to do. And it fixes a lot of my issues with the second one. Like Keanu Reeves' acting. I didn't like his acting in the second one. I don't mind it here. The action in the second film, while it wasn't bad, it was competent. And the CG blood is very distracting at times. This film fixes that problem of just having mostly shootouts in the second one, to instead having a mixture of shootouts. You've got like bike chases, or a bike chase. You've got a horseback scene. You have knife fights. You have even more hand-to-hand fights, which is awesome. And yeah, it mixes up the action, and the action is one of my huge issues with the second one. Even though I thought it was still good, and the action was above average, I won't say it was amazing. It was above average for a film of that budget that usually kind of just do whatever with the action. It wasn't paced well. The second film took like a good 50 minutes after the first action scene to have another one, and in between that it got a bit boring because the story of the second film really isn't much, and it feels very slapped together, which this film's story has parts that feel slapped together, and I will touch on that. But this film spaced out the action scenes very well, and it started off with a bang, which that's how you should start it off. But yeah, another issue I had with the second one, The villain here, while I hate the villain, I hate Aisha Kate Dillon as the villain. Hate her to death. Because I do not believe her being menacing. At least her character makes sense. She's there because the Continental still helped John Wick, Winston, gave John Wick an hour to get away before the excommunicado would kick in so that he could have a head start. And then she, shuts down the hotel. At least that makes sense. In the second film, it felt like, oh, there's nothing from the first film we can latch onto, even though the second film starts out with a relative of the villain of the first film, which that could have easily become the villain of the second film. It would have been better. And Peter Stormare is an actually good actor instead of Ricardo Scamarcio, whatever his fucking name was. In this film, in that film, it just felt like, oh, we need a character that's John Wick's friend that wasn't in the first film. They could have easily brought back David Patrick Kelly. Brought back David Patrick Kelly and actually done something with him. Because he was just kind of there to see his face in the second one. But, in the third film, at least the villain, it makes sense why the villain is there, why she's going everywhere. Kind of. She's like, oh, Bowery King, you gave Kimber 1911 to John Wick with 7 bullets, you get 7 cuts. Angelica Houston, you get a sword through your hands. Didn't make a lot of sense. But I guess whatever. But yeah, I will say, other than those things, and well, yeah, pretty much the villain is my main issue with the film, which most reviewers would be like, oh yeah, the villain's bad, so take off 3 whole points. I'm not gonna do that. I still love the film. I love this, and I think it is easily the best John Wick film so far. I'm not holding out a ton of hope that the fourth one is gonna be better. I'm mostly at least hoping that it's not boring. And that I'm not gonna go into the fourth one hating it. I just know how it ends. I'm not gonna spoil how it ends. My review is going to be a spoiler review for the entirety of it, though, probably. So I'll have to list that. But still, I'm going into it with an open mind, just so everybody knows before they say I just want to hate on it. I want to love it. I want it to be a great movie, but the issue is people kept hyping it up as the best action movie ever, that's just simply not going to be true. Films like Hard Boiled are always going to be better than the John Wick films because they're practical. I already know that John Wick Chapter 4, because of the $100 million budget, they're going to cheat a lot more shit with CGI. And the CGI blood already is a turnoff for me at many points. But, anyways, the action in this film. These are pretty much the best action sequences of the entire series. Because, in the first one, what do you got? You've got the scene in the house that's, well done. You've got the scene in the club, which is fine. I don't love it as much as a lot of people do. I've had talks with other people about the realism of these films, and I don't see the realism. I understand how guns work, guys. I've shot guns before. I own guns. I own a rifle right there. I have a revolver in a lockbox. But this film, I understand. While I was at work, I was like, I just don't buy them being realistic. You can love the film. I don't care. You can love the film. That's your opinion. I'm just not going to buy that it's fully realistic. Because if it was to be realistic, it would be like more like fly by the seat of your pants and less like choreographed. And John Wick's action scenes do, while I love the action scenes of this third film, they still feel very choreographed. That's how it feels. It doesn't feel very natural. And I had somebody in line be like, well, Keanu passed the 3-gun course. I understand that. I understand how marketing works. And how they pass that off as, oh, the fight scenes are real because Keanu knows how to use guns. That means nothing. It means that he could do the action scenes that are prepared beforehand. But still, this film's action scenes, like, easily the best of the series so far. The scene on the horse was really cool. Some really cool shots, like John Wick shooting the biker in the helmet and you seeing the blood splat. Like, I thought that was an interesting choice. There's the scene on the bikes, which, yes, while I can kind of tell it's green screen, it's still fun and pretty dynamic and it keeps moving. The scene in the the big scene in the Continental at the end is amazing. It's very well choreographed. There's a lot of shit happening at once. It's not static. I liked the use of like him having to keep on shooting because of the advanced armor of the Continental baddies. And I loved the glass house fight with Zero, and I liked the dialogue exchange. The best scene in the film, though, the best action scene in the film, in the beginning with the assassin with the book, where he like breaks the guy's neck on the book, that was really cool. The best scene in the film, though, is the one that Halle Berry participates in, which is the dog scene, where she's using the dogs and actually shooting. I really liked how dynamic that was with her using the dogs and also shooting, and it made it more believable that Halle Berry was killing them, which she's still very believable in the like judo shit and all that. So many female-led action movies, or so many action films that have female action participants, forget that women, hate to say it like this, women on average aren't as strong as men. Men are going to be able to do a bit more physically in ways due to testosterone. So to combat this, you have actors like Cynthia Rothrock, like in Tiger Claws. There's a scene where she's fighting Bolo Young, who is a very strong dude. And she like takes an oar and like starts using that as a weapon because she's proficient in weapons. That is her main proficiency. And it makes sense because she's a small woman, and against this big guy, she's not really going to do a ton, and it's not really realistic to have a small woman like her beating up like a bunch of guys at once. This film also does that very well, where she uses her she uses cover when she needs to. She doesn't just like go out guns a-blazing like John Wick does, and she's very like much trying to keep herself safe and use these dogs to her advantage to like disable some of the attackers, and then she can shoot them. I really liked that, and I loved that they used the dogs for real. It's awesome. It's awesome to see actual dogs in a movie of this budget. The film was made for $75 million. I was expecting a lot more CGI. There are bits that are obvious CGI. They didn't really bother me that much. I'm just hoping the fourth one doesn't have even worse CGI. There are some bits of CGI blood that look a bit too, like blood splatters on walls that look a bit too similar for me, and they could have mixed it up a bit more. That happened in the second one a bit too, but for the most part, it didn't bother me that much. Excuse me. But yeah, Halle Berry, again, a big standout of the film. I really wish she was in the film more, because she's in less than a quarter of the film. And I really wish she returned for the fourth one, but the story's very... Some people say that she wanted more money, some people say that she just up and quit, so I don't know what the fuck to think. But yeah, this film 100% just does what I wanted the films to do, which was be a showcase for the action and have a decent story. This film both has a decent story, which the second film did not for me, The second film's story felt very slapdash. This film, while it does also kind of like retcon shit from the first film and second film, it made more sense, I guess. Like the whole elder thing where John Wick like goes into the desert till he's almost dead and then some, and then he gets brought back and they're like, oh, we can before they were like, oh, once you're excommunicado, the only way you can get out is by death. And then the elder's just like, oh, if you do this thing for me, I reverse your excommunicado. Like, what? I mean, I understand you're not supposed to think about the plot much. I don't. But the people that say these movies are perfect or whatever, they aren't. They aren't writing-wise, they aren't action-wise. There are many films with other better action scenes than the first two. This film, I'd say, is on equal ground with Nobody for me. In entertainment. The first two films are entertaining in their own right. This film, because Nobody, again, has a lower budget, for what it could do on that budget, Nobody was equally as entertaining as this. I know many people will disagree with me. I like Nobody more than the first two John Wicks. And I cannot wait for the sequel, actually. That's a sequel I'm looking forward to. I'm not going to get myself overhyped, because I really want to enjoy it. But I am looking forward to it. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get to the pros and cons. Pros. Keanu Reeves is improved acting-wise. Definitely. Halle Berry is nice to see. Ian McShane, Lawrence Fishburne, Mark Dacascos, Lance Reddick, Angelica Houston all do great jobs. The action, again, some of the biggest standout action sequences of the entire series so far. Even though people will not shut up about this fourth film's dragon fire shotgun sequence. I'm ready to be disappointed with CGI. There's apparently a nunchuck sequence, though, which I'm a little bit looking forward to nunchucks, because I like nunchucks, and not a lot of films in America use nunchucks. But yeah. The score by, I think it's the same guys the other films. Let me find it. Oh my god, there's so many names here. Tyler Bates. Tyler Bates does another amazing soundtrack. I really like the kind of like not too over the top John Wick theme, the da da da. I like that it's not super overdone. I really like that this film takes more electronic tones than the other two. It's electronic and rock, and I love it. During the Continental, like the big old Continental shootout action sequence, I like the classical music used. I'm not sure exactly what song it was, but I liked it. The film is gorgeous. Along with the first two, it is still very gorgeous. Lighting is beautiful. Apparently that's all a lot of people need for a movie is lighting. The film doesn't cut a ton during the action sequences, which is a big plus. There are a lot of indie films that also don't do that, but I guess people just don't watch those because they're like, oh, actors I don't care about. You could try watching a Scott Adkins film for once in your life. But, again, I like the pacing of this film a lot more than the first two. The first film took literally like 40 minutes or 30 minutes at least to get to the first action scene, and I understand build up for the character. I understand that. And the first action sequence didn't really impress me as much as I wanted it to. But I still like the first film. If I gave it a legitimate rating, I'd give it a 9. But that's mostly for like production value, like we're setting up an interesting world, not really for the action. Cons, again, the CGI blood, and my main con, my big main con, Asa K. Dillon is a horrible main villain. Horrible. Zero, played by Mark Dacascos, should have been the main villain. Not this bitch. I don't I say bitch as in the character. I hate the character. I hate the acting. I hate her very monotone delivery that does not scare me at all, or I don't feel like she's a threat. And none of the actors, like, when you're up against Lawrence Fishburne, Ian McShane, Lance Reddick, and Angelica Houston, and they don't look scared, and they're like great actors. They could fake being scared. They can't even fake being scared by this villain. You fucked up, because they're supposed to be scared by her, and in the behind the scenes they keep saying, I wanted somebody who was unassuming and could like scare the main players in the film. They're not scared by her. You can see in their faces they're not scared by her. But yeah, other than those two things, and them making up shit as they go along, which a lot of these films do that, I still really love this film. I easily think this is the best of the series so far, and I'll find a way to watch John Wick Chapter 4 at some point. But yeah, if you like the video, comment down below, like the video, subscribe, comment, whatever. I think I said comment twice. And movie reviewer next door, out.